a fan. That's how you got down originally. Period. I heard the new you did. Yeah. And they dissing you in the movie. You in the movie getting dissing. You gotta eat it, sitting in the crowd and everything. You ever see somebody from Harlem try to act like they from Harlem so bad that you gotta keep saying, I'm from... You wasn't there.
I was the CEO of Diplomats. I made Diplomats with him. I was with him forever.
Was Jim. That wasn't Cam. You know what I'm saying?
Cam was like the J.
Cam was the artist.
After you heard all these mixtapes, that's how you got in. Mase actually taught you how.
From the gang, right? All the gang all ran under Jim.
Right.
All the muscle.
The truth is a serious thing, no matter how you look at it. The truth is what the truth is.
Jim Jones just got put on blast in the worst way possible. Cam'ron and Mase dropped brutal receipts, DMs, phone records, and clips that flipped the whole Dipset story upside down. The same crew that once built Harlem's golden era just exposed each other on social media, and now Jim's out here looking like the villain in his own legacy. But the wildest part, the more you dig into these receipts, the more it looks like Jim might have been lying to his fans this whole time. The streets of Harlem are talking again, and this time it ain't about fashion or fly bars, it's about betrayal, receipts, and humiliation. Jim Jones woke up to what fans are calling the Dipset demolition. Cam'ron and Mase, the two men who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Jim as part of Harlem's most iconic movement, have turned the mic on him and dropped what they're calling the truth. It all started when Cam posted a late night clip on Instagram showing what looked like old text messages and voice memos from Jim. The caption, "Don't rewrite history, bro." That one line sent the internet spinning. Within hours, Mase jumped in on It Is What It Is, the podcast he co-hosts with Cam, and the two went off, pulling out screenshots, old contracts, and old interviews where they say Jim tried to take credit for Dipset moves that weren't even his. They called it correcting the record, but fans called it something else, a straight up public execution. Twitter lit up with hashtags like hashtag receipts by Cam and hashtag Jim exposed, with people reposting clips and memes of Jim looking stunned in old interviews. You know it's bad when your old footage becomes reaction content. Now, if you know the Dipset story, you know there's always been tension. Cam was the visionary, Mase was the mentor turned rival, and Jim was the loyal soldier who climbed his way up. But this new round of receipts has people asking, was Jim ever as loyal as he made himself out to be? Because according to Cam and Mase, Jim didn't just switch sides. He allegedly spun the whole story to make himself the hero while playing victim behind closed doors. And that's the kind of accusation that doesn't just spark beef, it burns reputations. So the question is, what receipts did they actually drop, and why did it hit Jim so hard this time? Let's get into the evidence that just flipped Harlem's story upside down. When Cam'ron dropped those screenshots, he didn't just air out dirty laundry, he threw the whole closet into the street. Late night posts, no caption at first, just a few cryptic text exchanges between him and Jim Jones. But fans knew exactly what it meant. The messages show Jim allegedly begging Cam to let him use the Dipset name for a business deal, something Cam claimed he never approved. Then came the bombshell. Cam accused Jim of lying to fans about being the brains behind Dipset's reunion tour and past Verzu's negotiations. Cam doubled down the next day on Instagram Live saying, "I built this brand from scratch. I made sure everybody ate. But the moment I say no, I become the bad guy." The tone wasn't just disappointed, it was surgical. And that's when Mase slid in with backup, confirming that Jim had been reaching out behind the scenes to lock in deals without Cam's blessing. He called it Harlem politics at its finest, and then dropped the phrase that had everyone reposting, "You can't fake receipts, bro." Within hours, clips from their It Is What It Is podcast started circulating. Cam and Mase weren't just teasing. They had dates, timestamps, even voice notes where Jim allegedly admitted to sidestepping them on business. Fans were losing it. One comment said, "This ain't a beef, this a full audit." The receipts also touched a nerve because of how personal they felt. Cam wasn't just accusing Jim of shady business. He was saying Jim tried to rewrite Dipset history, to take credit for Cam's original deals, his branding ideas, and even early music connections that built the Dipset empire. And when those clips went viral, Jim stayed quiet. No tweets, no lives, no denials, just silence. And in the hip-hop world, silence is loud. Fans took it as a sign he got caught lacking, while others said he was just waiting to strike back. But this story doesn't stop with a couple text messages, because when Made joined in, he didn't just back up Cam, he added his own brutal receipts that dragged Jim's reputation through the mud. When Made jumped into the mix, that's when this whole thing went from drama to demolition. Cam had already cracked the door open, but Mate kicked it clean off the hinges. On their It Is What It Is podcast, the two Harlem vets sat side by side, looking calm, collected, and a little too ready to talk. Then Mae leaned in with that classic smirk and said, "Let's show them what we talking about." That's when he dropped what fans are calling the brutal receipts. First came the screenshots, old texts where Jim allegedly downplayed Cam's role in Dipset business deals while hyping up his own. Then Mize played an audio clip, said to be from a few years back, where Jim could be heard complaining about not getting the respect he deserves from Cam and Mate. The crowd online went wild. People were quoting it, remixing it, turning it into memes within minutes. But the real knockout punch was what Mahe said next. He told the audience, Jim wanted to be the boss, but he ain't build the building. That line spread faster than wildfire. Within hours, Jim ain't build the building was trending on X, and everyone from Harlem fans to hip-hop pages started choosing sides. Maeche didn't stop there. He dug deeper, pulling out a photo of an old check stub from early Dipset days, allegedly proving that Jim wasn't even listed as a partner on one of their biggest early ventures. People talk legacy, Mache said, but paper don't lie. The delivery was calm, but the message, cold-blooded. By this point, the comments under every clip were pure chaos. Some were calling Mashi petty, others were praising him for standing on truth. But no matter how you sliced it, Jim Jones was looking cornered. His reputation, built on loyalty, hustle, and Harlem pride, was now being picked apart by the very guys who helped build it. And what made it worse? Jim stayed silent again, not even a story post, just a man scrolling through social media while his name burned. But this wasn't just about friendship anymore, it was about credibility. Because when the guys who made you start exposing your history, the streets stop asking who's right and start wondering who's real. And that's exactly where this story heads next. How those Harlem realness questions turn this feud from petty to personal. To really understand why this hit Jim Jones so hard, you gotta rewind the clock. Back in the early 2000s, Dipset wasn't just a rap group, it was a movement. Harlem was proud, the fashion was loud, and Jim was right there in the mix, riding shotgun next to Cam'ron and Juelz Santana. But even back then, people whispered that Jim was always playing both sides. See, Cam was the architect, Mai was the foundation, and Jim was the soldier who wanted to be general. He was the muscle of the crew, loyal, loud, and always down to ride. But over the years, that loyalty started to look more like ambition. Fans still remember when Jim was rumored to be plotting solo moves behind Cam's back. He dropped Hustler's POME, started pushing his Vamp Life brand, and slowly began building his own empire. Nothing wrong with leveling up, but the way he did it had the streets side-eyeing. The cracks really showed when Dipset started falling apart. While Cam went quiet and Made went spiritual, Jim was outside doing interviews, taking shots, and claiming he was the one holding the legacy down. That's when fans noticed a pattern. Every time Cam or Mahe tried to make peace, Jim somehow reignited the tension. It's like he couldn't resist being at the center of the chaos. And when Dipset finally reunited years later for shows and their versus with the Locks, Jim painted himself as the glue that made it happen. But now, with these new receipts, Cam and Mai are saying that was never true, that Jim was negotiating behind the scenes and twisting the story to make himself look like the hero. That's why this new round of exposure stings so bad. It's not just about clout, it's about credibility. Jim's always positioned himself as the loyal Harlem hustler who kept Dipset alive, but these receipts make him look like the opportunist who rewrote history. The Game once said, "The streets don't love you," and right now, Jim's learning that lesson firsthand. Because when your own crew starts pulling files, the respect you built over 20 years can crumble overnight. And that's exactly what's happening, because the streets of Harlem are now asking a question Jim never wanted to hear. Was he ever really one of them? When your whole identity is built on Harlem authenticity, the last thing you can afford is Harlem itself turning on you. But that's exactly what's happening to Jim Jones right now. After Cam and Mate aired those receipts, the streets started whispering and then shouting that Jim's image might not be as bulletproof as he made it seem. Harlem fans on social media didn't hold back. One viral tweet said, "Jim was the muscle, not the mastermind. Cam built the empire. Mate gave it style. Jim just clocked in. Others went deeper, questioning if Jim's whole from the block persona was exaggerated for the cameras. That might sound petty, but in Harlem, reputation is currency. And once your street cred gets questioned, everything else starts to crumble." Then came the think pieces, the Reddit threads, the YouTube breakdowns, people dissecting Dipset history like it's a true crime case. Folks started pulling old interviews, comparing quotes, catching inconsistencies in Jim's retelling of events. One post racked up thousands of likes saying, "Jim Jones been rewriting Harlem's story for years. Cam and Mahe just hit undo." Even some OGs in the city chimed in, saying Jim always had ambition, but not the leadership chops to back it up. The word opportunist started floating around, and once that sticks in hip-hop, it's poison, especially when it comes from your peers, not your haters. But here's where it gets really bad. Jim's silence is fueling the fire. Every day he doesn't respond, the narrative builds that he can't respond. Because if those receipts really are real, what can he say? Any denial just risks Cam or Mahe dropping more proof. And while fans are busy clowning him online, industry insiders are reportedly starting to distance themselves too. A few promoters have even paused Dipset reunion talks, saying they don't want to be in the middle of family business. Translation, Jim's brand is getting radioactive. At this point, it's not just about ego, it's about survival. Because when the streets turn on you and your brothers and rap stop protecting you, the empire you helped build starts to look more like a house of cards. And the fallout's not done yet, because the real damage isn't just what fans are saying online. It's what this means for Jim's future moves, projects, and legacy in hip-hop. This beef isn't just social media drama, it's a straight-up branding disaster for Jim Jones. Because in hip-hop, perception is everything. You can lose money and bounce back, but once the culture says you're fake, there's no rebrand strong enough to fix it. And right now, Jim's facing exactly that. Industry folks are saying the fallout from these receipts could hit his career harder than any diss track ever could. Remember, Jim built his second act off business ventures, reality TV, clothing, podcasts, and guest appearances. But when your name's trending next to exposed, liar, and fake, sponsors get nervous real quick. Already, some fans are pointing out how Dipset reunion plans, rumored brand deals, and collaborations have gone quiet since this blew up. It's also hitting him musically. Jim's been dropping music pretty consistently the past few years, but his biggest appeal came from nostalgia, people seeing him as one of the last Harlem Street legends. Now that image is cracked wide open. If fans stop believing in the story, they stop streaming the music. Simple as that.